we know that accessing the internet is not the thing people want. It is the services, it is the need they have. If you think about government, public sector services, the government is the biggest supplier of services. The thing to do is to think about the way people access services. So we've been involved in digitizing the e-subsidy for fertilizer. So farmers are very happy. We need to separate how healthcare is funded from how people experience accessing healthcare. So all we are doing is digitizing the process. Safaricom was started as a company to deliver connectivity, to connect people, isn't it? So we started with a base station that allows people to connect. Mostly, initially it was calls, then SMSs, isn't it? Then eventually you started with 3G, you could do some data. 4G is the data network. Now everyone can access the internet. 5G takes it even further. So, and fiber even increases your experience. But now we know that accessing the internet is not the thing people want. It is the services, it is the need they have. If you think about it, individuals are using the internet for their own needs, so reflecting their lifestyle. Enterprise, small businesses, we also enable them to do what they need to do. Now, if you think about government, public sector services, the government is the biggest supplier of services. They provide education, they provide support to key ecosystem like agriculture. When the market is not as successful, they support the market to ensure that everyone is included. The public sector plays a very healthcare. The public sector plays a very important role. So how will the country benefit from digitization and use of technology if we leave the public sector services out of the journey? So remember, today you don't need to queue for your driving license or your passport. If it wasn't digitized, you'd still be going to your house, isn't it? Remember those days? Yeah? So the thing to do is to think about the way people access services, whether that is agricultural services. So we've been involved in digitizing the e-subsidy for fertilizer. So farmers are very happy. They can go in and redeem their voucher that they have been given for a few bags of fertilizer. And many of them are actually improving their yields, therefore actually guaranteeing food security. Remember we had a drought. That fertilizer subsidy has really, and has even been acknowledged by the private sector, that is making a big difference. If you go to financial inclusion, we had Hustler Fund, which was to try and say there are so many people who are not banked, who are not accessing credit. Let's give them some credit. In Inua Jamii, there will be people who, the pensioners and the retired people who want to access their pension, or who want to access the payments from government on a regular basis. And therefore, digitizing their experience is important. So healthcare is also one of them. Whether it is funded through NHIF, or whether it's funded through SHIF, or whatever method that you fund, we need to separate how healthcare is funded from how people experience accessing healthcare. So all we are doing is digitizing the process so that you can register, you can see your name, you can see your dependent. You can go into hospital, the hospital can identify you and say, this is Peter who is coming for a service. And the hospital can know, based on your ID, it can know what you are entitled to, the limits. The hospital can then treat you digitally, so there will be, every health professional will have a digital tablet, and then eventually claim the money, depending on the fund. There are 3 funds based on the new law. The primary health care, which is level 2 and 3, the SHIF, which is social health insurance fund for employed and also those who are able to pay, and also the chronic illness, accident, and so on. So that means that everyone will be able to access health care, but in a digital way, in the same way that everyone is accessing digital services, other services in a digital way. So we shouldn't leave those people behind. Yeah, we shouldn't leave healthcare in in a manual world, or we should enable hospitals to be able to treat you quickly. If you ever go to a hospital, what happens is the process of approving insurance, whether it's private insurance or national insurance, takes a long time. Now with the new one, in future, what would happen is you go in because you're already identified once you put your ID, and eventually it will become digital. It will identify you almost instantly. Of course, initially we have some challenges as we launch, but it will identify you. The hospital, you know who you are, your dependents, if you're carrying a dependent. It will be able to treat the right person, yeah? And then eventually it will be able to claim from the government or from SHIF or from wherever. So that it allows that whole ecosystem. And then you can overlay all the other services, you know, how medicine and drugs are supplied, how, you know, whether they are the right medicine, you know, all that stuff. So there's a lot of data overlay that can help the ecosystem.